Hollywood is a secretive industry. In shadowy corners of rooms, some are murmured, some people are destined to remain hidden forever. However, Gene Hackman accomplished the unimaginable in the 3 weeks preceding his passing. He finally spoke up. His revelation of a dark and disturbing truth about Hollywood, after decades of secrecy, sent shockwaves through the audience. But his admission did not bring any closure. On the contrary, it just raised more doubts. Were you cautioned? Is it a confession? Or an ultimate effort to evade the encroaching darkness? To find out, stick around. Gene Hackman was never one to merely put on a show. Then he burst into tears. In contrast to Jack Nicholson's famously theatrical and self-indulgent fury, his on-screen fury was more restrained. No, there was something more subtle and fundamental at work in Hackman's anger, the kind that felt like a righteous man's breaking point. His capacity to control his temper was extraordinary. He could keep his rage bottled up until it bubbled to the surface. It may easily explode at any moment. And it was the anguish of childhood that gave rise to that talent and drive. He was 13 years old when Hackman's father abandoned him. A silent wave from a passing car was all that was exchanged, instead of a sad farewell. There was greater impact in that split second than in any amount of words, an open sore that would never mend. He recreated the eerie wave for a moment in the French Connection decades later, reflecting his formative experiences of loss and abandonment. "I guess that's why I decided to be an actor," Hackman once remarked. "Without that experience as a child, I don't think I would have developed such a high threshold for human conduct." Anger consumed Hackman as he was left with a mother and a younger sibling he had trouble connecting with. Desperate for freedom, he joined the Marines at the age of 16, lying about his age. It was a defiant gesture, but it was also a survival tactic. The structure and discipline made him more resilient, but the wounds from his upbringing were still there. He brought that fury with him when he ultimately made it big in Hollywood. As if to punish the filmmakers for his father's abandonment, he was notorious for giving them a run for their money. Do what he said and make them pay. No one was immune to Hackman's anguish. The unsaid, seedier side of Hollywood became acutely apparent to him as a result. He witnessed firsthand how the industry's politics, brutality, and icy indifference were absorbed by its employees. However, Hackman was never flexible. He would not give in to the crushing power of hypocrisy and betrayal. His refusal to be silenced and his boldness in exposing manipulation earned him a reputation for disobedience. Perhaps it explains why he turned down career-boosting roles. Ordinary People, Apocalypse Now, and The Graduate. If the terms of the arrangement weren't fair or the money wasn't right, he wouldn't participate. When he tackled the unsettling, unfiltered parts of human nature, that's when he really shone. His portrayal of a guy haunted by guilt and paranoia in The Conversation is his proudest work to this day. Not only did he return to the part of Popeye Doyle in French Connection 2, but he also gave it more depth and dimension, drowning oneself in a terrifying detox scenario that was eerily similar to Withdrawal. He will go back and visit some early pain that many of us would rather not touch. Arthur Penn, who led him in Night Maneuvers, said it best. He's prepared to put his arm into the fire to its maximum extent. It wasn't enough for Hackman. He lived, he revealed, and he would not let go. Ultimately, he never truly parted ways with the 13-year-old child who stood on the street, watching his father wave farewell. While playing those parts allowed the boy to channel his suffering into something bigger than himself. Perhaps he found solace in that. Hackman overcame adversity to become one of Hollywood's all-time greats. But when he decided to leave, everyone wondered why. He provided an explanation, but rather than drawing a conclusion, his remarks have shrouded Hollywood in mystery and raised more disturbing concerns than they have answered. The unexpected and understated exit of Gene Hackman from Hollywood was rather shocking. A guy who had been synonymous with the film business for decades having played some of the most nuanced and emotionally charged roles ever, abruptly disappeared. Critics and fans alike were perplexed as to why he left at the pinnacle of his renowned career. His 2004 farewell film, Welcome to Mooseport, was unimpressive for an actor of his caliber. He made it sound easy by saying it was all about his health. Was that, however, the complete truth? It was after a moment of contemplation that Hackman decided to retire. He said that a stress test in New York was the starting point in an interview he gave to Empire magazine in 2009. "My doctor told me that I shouldn't put any strain on my heart because it wasn't in good enough shape." A plausible explanation from a man in his 70s who had devoted himself fully to his craft. That statement was sufficient to excuse his departure. However, there was an air of uncertainty about his remarks and delivery. Was his health the only factor, or was something more sinister at work? Hackman began to fade from public view in the late 1990s. His time in New York was a terrible time, he said in a 1999 interview with Charlie Rose, dismissing the thought of returning to the stage. The use of such ominous and disturbing language suggested the unease he had regarding his formative years in the industry. For Hackman, Hollywood was never his home. The power battles, exploitation, and constant pressure that could crush even the hardest men were all things he witnessed, even while others chose to ignore them. Again discussing his impending retirement in 2011, this time for GQ, he revealed that the only way he would contemplate returning to the big screen is if a film could be shot entirely in his home, with minimal outside interference, starring just himself or a couple of close friends. It was a telling sentiment. Once able to command sets with his mere presence, Hackman now wanted no part of the entertainment industry. He accepted the Cecil B. DeMille Lifetime Achievement Award from a throng at the 2003 Golden Globes. He proudly stated that he had always aspired to be an actor. Still, he abandoned it all a year later. In his spare time, he painted and wrote, collaborated on novels with Daniel F. Lenahan, and enjoyed spending time in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with his wife Betsy Arakawa. Away from the mayhem of Hollywood, he had discovered tranquility, yet the industry specter lingered. Has something significantly more nefarious been going on behind the scenes that caused Hackman to go? Or was it only the pressures of acting? A long-hidden secret that Hackman had never spoken about until only 3 weeks before his death finally came to light. Not only was his time in Hollywood draining, it was poisonous. What he had concealed for so long was now being revealed. Unfortunately, the sector has undergone some changes. Perhaps Hackman had anticipated this development far in advance of anyone else. Even though Gene Hackman had tremendous gifts, he also had tremendous responsibilities. He bore the burden of Hollywood's deepest, darkest secrets for many years. The industry kept certain secrets from him while he was working there. However, a life-altering phone conversation was made by him 3 weeks prior to his passing. Telling one of his best pals the truth was something Hackman finally did because he was sick of keeping it a secret. Too much had passed his eyes. He was no stranger to the lavish gatherings of Hollywood's elite, where they pretended to celebrate. Something evil, however, lurked beneath the surface of these meetings. Concerning the unsaid, he spoke. What was really going on behind the scenes of these exclusive gatherings? And it was terrifying. Hackman disclosed that these gatherings were not casual affairs. They served as a target for hunters. Hackman was, and always had been, an honest guy who refused to give in to Hollywood's sick standards. What he witnessed behind the scenes, though, deeply unsettled him. He remembers seeing powerful people, including producers, directors, and even some of the biggest stars in acting, prey on young, impressionable performers and even children who were pulled into these private circles. It wasn't a small number of incompetent people, he conceded. It was the structure. Those who dared to speak out were blacklisted, their jobs damaged, and their lives ruined, he said, since fear governed Hollywood. All too often, he witnessed promising young people disappear from the industry, while rumors circulated about threats and attempts to silence them, effectively burying the truth. According to him, there are methods to vanish from sight, even if you're not dead yet.